Hello, everyone. Chris here at PTTT 120, along with Greg from Mac Trains. Now, this is the second episode of Let's Talk TT, and we're rather pleased because we've got two fine gentlemen from Hornby with us. Guys, for all the newbies, because we do have a lot of newbies coming to this scale, can you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, yeah. So my name is Martyn Weaver. I'm the brand MD for Hornby Railways at Hornby Hobbies Limited. So I essentially look after everything to do with UK trains, which includes Hornby Double O and Hornby TT.
Hello, everyone. My name's Carl Hart. I'm the product development manager for Hornby Railways. So I look after all the development of our TT 120 models and double O gauge, sort of managing the manufacturing and bringing the product to market.
Excellent. Craig, do you want to say hello as well?
That's grand. We're delighted to have our second episode of Let's Talk TT. And we've had lots of feedback from folks so far. It's been largely positive, and we're delighted to get Martyn and Carl joining us today. So let's get into the questions.
Right. So the first one, and it's a bit of a kind of like almost a myth-busting thing for the question. It's about actually, and I don't know how much information you can give us, but actually how well is TT 120 doing? Because I know you guys don't bother looking at so much of the social media, particularly the negative side of things, but there's a whole bunch of us who think it's doing really well. And that's certainly your customers. We're enjoying it. We're buying all your products. And then we've got people with bigger platforms telling us that maybe it's not doing so well. Maybe it's the end of Hornby. Maybe it was a complete mistake. So I wonder if you can, now you do come on to your own platforms and say very positive things, but now we've had a second year end. I don't know whether you've had your full results yet or not, but is there anything more you can expand upon, Martyn?
So yeah, I mean, to answer the kind of the question, I mean, and there are I suppose different viewpoints on it. So if you start with like the kind of the commercial side of it, is it successful? TT from a sales perspective is delivering exactly where we expected it to be. It doesn't kind of follow the same patterns as what Double O does because it's established. You know, in the world of Double O, you sell sets in and around Christmas. You sell accessories all year round. Maybe there's a little spike in January because a lot of people have got sets for Christmas and they want to add track packs for it. And then things like locos, especially high-end detailed locos, they as and when they come in throughout the year, whether it's January, March, or whenever, they come in and they go out very quickly. And then rolling stock sort of follows a little slightly different trajectory. You'll get a spike at release and then a slower ease off. And that's how it works in Double O, but it doesn't work like that in TT. And there are several reasons for that. Is that the people that are coming into TT are less kind of seasonal driven. So the sets, which is the obvious starting point, aren't really being bought as Christmas presents like you'd expect to see in Double O. So there are kind of people joining all year round. And every time we know we sell a set, we know that's a person on board. And those sets are doing well. I mean, the Eastern set, for example, we're out of stock of that now for the third time in 2 years. So did we do a really bad job of forecasting it, or has it been more of a success than we thought? I think it's probably a bit of both in there, if I'm actually honest. But the positive being there is the demand is there. Then when you move into locos, that's been very interesting because at launch, we're launching with key things like Mallard and Scotsman, which have always been very evergreen and they've been quite strong. And then the second liveries off those toolings were sort of so-so. We haven't launched the 50 yet. That comes next month. But the HST has been a really interesting one. And I was looking at some data last week. And at the point of release, the sales of the HSTs is much higher than what any of the Steam has been. So if you follow a set trajectory, you'd be saying commercially, it's doing really, really well. If you followed Steam, you'd be like, actually, it's probably where we expect it to be. But then when we've seen this kind of, I can't say modern era, but later era product like the HST, actually, that's gone off the radar of what we expected. Yeah. So I would say we're kind of on level, if anything, slightly above, but it really is driven by the new things coming through because it's opening up new areas and regions.
Could that be a reflection on the new customer base?
I think it could be, yeah. I think potentially, when we kind of break down demographics of audiences, I think as a kind of a wider average, obviously the double O market is much bigger. I think TT is skewing a little bit younger, and I'm not saying really young as in kids because it's not a kids product, but as far as kind of the average adult going into it, I think quite possibly there is, and that will that shape what we do in the future? Who knows? Will we potentially move forward quicker with diesels as opposed to some of the steam outline? As I said before, we're not sitting to a plan that's been made over 5 years. We're going to be as reactive as we can, so that could mean more sort of later diesels sort of kind of come up the league a little bit. And going back to the questions, I covered it from a commercial point. From a consumer point, I think it's been generally really positive. I did model railway shows, the key events running from October right the way through to model rail Scotland earlier in the year. And it was interesting to see a progression, even over that period of time, of the more and more people that are into TT. So with the first event we did, no one had really seen it other than in video format and in photos. And the response that we were getting on stand, and also the Hornby magazine, who had a TT layout, was like, oh, people were generally saying, wow, this is quite amazing. I wasn't expecting it to be this detailed and be, it should be easy to predict what it would look like, but sometimes it's not till you see it in the flesh. So there is definitely momentum picking up. So it is by no ways deemed a mistake by Hornby to enter into this scale, and there's a lot of commitment still to go forward with it.
Excellent. Talking of reaction, we've noticed some changes from the original plans, and we'll possibly talk about them a little bit later on. But reacting to that idea of the fact that these aren't really considered to be starter sets, even though lots of people have called them that. We know they're not. We know that you need when you're using those big Pacifics with the bogies, there's been issues that we've had to resolve, and it's all been part of, and that's part of actually model railways. It's not so much a surprise for many of us, and it wasn't really a big issue for most of us. The newbies maybe sent the locos back and asked questions, technical questions, which of course I think I got really good help from, because one thing that I think stands out for Hornby is your customer services. They're second to none. They should be given awards, I think. And whatever you do, please don't ever put one of those computer chat things in as an option. I would much rather speak to a lady who answers the phone, because she puts you in the right place, gets you a person who really actually knows what they're talking about, and you get a top level service from you. The one back, little second. You were talking about how popular this set's been, this 125 set. Have you considered, now there's been lots of conversations about the numbering of the locos that are going to be in that set. Now, we're wondering, are you going to make sure that those numbers are going to be different on the carriages and the locos? Because we think that if you haven't, I think you might have dropped the ball on that one, because the collectors are desperate for buying a different loco with a different, even if it's just a different number.
Well, it's
a manufacturing balance, isn't it?
Yeah, the reason why the numbers are what they are, it isn't actually for manufacturing reasons. It's more about the coaches that we have as solo items for people being able to build full rake. So if we put different numbers on the set HSTs, then we'd have to review the coaches that we're carrying as well for them to be relevant.
Because you could already produce a full rake in the individual items, and so if you were doing two different numbers of coaches, then they would need to use another set of rakes. Yeah.
So I mean, from a kind of commercial standpoint and thinking the kind of collector mentality, yes, normally you would put a different running number on it, but what percentage of, this is a very open-ended thing, what percentage of the TT customer base in year two are collectors versus people that are just starting out? And in the world of double O, I think that ratio would be quite different. In TT, I think it's actually quite minimal. And the reasoning for putting those same numbers in there is purely that we then haven't got to produce and have sitting in the range another whole suite of coaches, and the retailer hasn't got to kind of carry that additional stock. Now, if we fast forward 5 years' time, when there are more users, and that could look quite different. But right now in these kind of earlier stages, we don't want to, we wouldn't want, retailers that have potentially bought the first rake of coaches to be thinking, oh, now they've brought out another rake of coaches and I've got these, I'm going to need to move them out. That leads to kind of an element of negativity, and that kind of weighing against that kind of collector versus people starting out. That is why, and as I say, if we were sitting in 5 years' time, my answer might be quite different to that.
Yeah. Okay. Good answer.
Yeah.
Because that I've had about 30 people ask me that question.
He's got one of them with that one. That's been one that's been troubled with for some time and desperate to ask. So that's great to have that out in the open, and that makes a perfect sense as well. It's interesting that you are able to provide sufficient analysis, I think, to differentiate the TT based on the OO and learn lessons across them. In that area, just to expand slightly in terms of how well TT has been received, I think part of the intention was to try to bring in new modelers. Do you feel TT is accomplishing that?
Yeah, I think it is. To what percentage, are we seeing cannibalization in OO? We're not really seeing that. No. We're not sort of hearing anything from our data or from sort of more quantitative comments back from retailers that are saying, well, now I've got this, I'm selling less of those. It doesn't really seem to be happening. I think it's giving a different option to what has been there in the past. Now, whether it's affecting other scales or not, I'm not really sure. I think it probably is still early to tell, but I think a good percentage, or a good enough percentage, of the people coming into the world of TT are new. There are some that are collectors and they're just buying anything Hornby, depending on what they specifically collect, or whether it's an era or region or whatnot. And then there are people who are coming into it for the first time and seeing it as an opportunity. And then there are a few, and I think it is only a few, who are doing multiple scales. And what that is an unknown. But
we had a question from a cross scaler, a guy called Iron Horse Railways, Craig. Excuse me. And he said the only thing that I want to know is do they have any future plans for attracting people like me? And I kind of felt like, well, it's a fair question, but right now you have to focus your marketing, don't you? And really, whether or not you want to attract a cross scaler, it's got to be really I presume it's really got to be their choice.
Yeah, right? I mean, the thing with a cross scaler, is really about their circumstance. Have they got one layout in one room and one in another, or have they got them all on the same board because it doesn't bother them? You then start getting down to the depths of people's preferences about having multiple scales or eras or whatnot. It really bothers some, and others it doesn't. And that audience probably isn't our priority. And it's not that they're not important. It's because of when you get down to that level, it's kind of so specific to that individual. I mean, what do they want? If you were to put a survey out to every cross scaler in that, I'd imagine, and say, what is it you want to see from TT? I'll be very surprised if there's a consistent answer along that, because at that stage, they're very developed in what they want and what they use. So obviously, any kind of person coming into TT, we welcome in that, but they're potentially already being kind of almost catered for.
Sure.
We move on, Carl. In terms of design team, what lessons do you feel the design team have taken on board? You've had the first wave of products are out. You've had the opportunity to see how that fares in the real world, as well as at your test track. You're now working on a second batch, third batch, probably fourth batch possibly of designs. What's that journey been like for the design team? What have you picked up on the, yeah, we definitely want to change this or adapt this? What's that been like for you?
A steep learning curve. I'll be honest.
Fair enough.
When we started TT, we didn't have capacity in our normal design team to take it on. So we employed some new designers, and we had to sort of train them up and work with them as they were sort of coming out with the first designs. And so they were learning, we were learning, the factorer was learning how to manufacture them, because all the tolerances are tighter and things like that. You know, we worked on it before it was released, about 3 years in development. And even after all the testing we done and trials we done, you know, you get it out into the real world and there's still problems. You know, we hold our hands up to that. I mean, I think the first batch of A3 and A4s, they had some teething issues, which could be fixed. But, you know, even when we got the first batches in, we were sitting over at the warehouse. We checked every one, basically, tried to check every one, because there were the factories had some issues with, you know, making every model 100% correct. So,
because obviously not every model is made by the same person, so you're going to have
exactly.
There's all continuity issues. Yeah,
any part in a locomotive, whether it be 00 scale or TT scale, has got a tolerance, you know, and those tolerances can build up. In TT scale, it's much tighter. It has to be much tighter because obviously you've got less clearances and things like that. So yeah, that side for us was a steep learning curve on the first couple of models.
Quick question about the Duchess. When we've looked at what you've shown with the models that have been your example models,
yeah,
it looks like you've taken the next step up from the Grizzly Pacifics. It looks like you've made some changes. It looks like you've made the body metal to perhaps improve weight. It looks like you've put a front coupler on, which everyone was screaming out for.
Yeah. So that model,
was that deliberate, or was that a reaction to what you'd found when the Pacifics first came
I
out?
medie with the front coupler, that was a reaction. You know, people were complaining that, you know, that didn't have a front coupler, and the die cast body is definitely with the A3 and A4. When we were developing that, we sort of got the model running on our test track, and then there was, you know, around a second radius, sometimes you got some wheel slip, and we played around with putting traction tires on the wheel sets. And I think at that time we were filming It's a Model World, and I think there was a little snippet where we showed traction tires, and we can't do that. So we sort of reverted back from that, and we had to live with what we had, basically. And I think the models are okay, but it's on the limit. It's on the limit. So with the Duchess, we thought we need to add as much weight as we can into the model. So that's the reason for the die-cast spoiler. You know, with that model, there's no issue with wheel slip. It's, you know, it's a really good puller. But Louis, the designer, he's done a fantastic job with that. He's gone to the nth degree with it. Even things like, you know, the sound chamber inside the tender is, you know, we've done a lot of research on how to improve the sound quality, and you know, it's basically the principles taken off our phone speaker chamber. So we've actually molded this. It's got some walls inside the chamber that actually extend the sound waves, so, you know, it gives you a better chuffing noise and things like that. So and also got things like kinematic coupling on the rear and things like this. So it's really just it's an evolution. You know, we're you know, it's all the development, isn't it? And, you know, you learn from your mistakes, and the good thing about learning from your mistakes, you don't make them again. You know, so that's the reason.
I noticed that obviously, you know, that wheel slippage that we got from the Pacifics, it did seem to be dependent on what kind of rolling stock we were using. So if I'm pulling 9, 10 Mark 1s, no problem. I mean, stick 3 or 4 of the earlier lit Pullmans on with their coil pickups. Obviously, there's added friction, and then it would start to struggle. But I suppose the only one that nothing was unsurmountable when it came to any of these dealing with rolling stock. And like I said, it's probably a lot more easier for an experienced model maker to deal with some of these tiny issues than it is for one who's brand new to the hobby. But the original tankers were they were like putting a brake on you it didn't matter. Lots of people had lots of different ideas of what to try. I've tried all of them, And the only way that I can put a decent length of those little tankers is by putting magnets on the underside of my logo and putting DCC concept steel plates under the track, so that I've got that extra, grip. Whereas all the vent wagons and the coal wagons, they all fine. You can have a huge long train of them. So, was there a different manufacturer of the tanker? Was it a different? Did it go for
it was the same manufacturer, but actually, we actually had that tanker that was developed in China, actually, and the amount of clearance they gave between the sort of the wheel face and the side frames of the chassis wasn't enough, and it every so often they would touch, especially if the cones inside the side frames are not, if they when they mold those, sometimes you get a tiny air bubble in the molding around those cones. You get like a big piece of sinkage in the molding, and if that happens, the cones on the axle sit too far up, and it allows the wheels to touch the bodywork. So right. I think at that time we struggled with clearances on that model. Okay.
So has that been rectified with the new releases?
Yeah. So we've made a change to that tooling now.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
People are going to love to hear that. I think there's the vast majority of your customers, I think, are really be quite understanding and forgiving if you every time that you guys hold your hands up and say, yeah, we need to sort this out, and then go away and sort it out.
Yeah.
That's what we want to hear.
Yeah. And they're lovely models. I mean, I've got the 12-ton tankers. I think they're beautiful models. It's just the running qualities are fine and small numbers, not on a large rig. That's not going to work.
Yeah.
If I go back to some of the design issues, when TT was first announced, I got quite excited. New and shiny, and I'm goggle-eyed. That's how it works. Nonetheless, I assumed, I confess, because of the space constraints, that you would likely use coreless motors rather than 3 or 5 poles, which you haven't done. I presume there's some reasoning. What is the purpose of that in terms of the design?
Yeah, so we've experienced. So we have looked at cordless motors. We've experienced issues with them. Okay, especially when you're using them with the 7229 controller, and it's to do with the frequency that controller runs at. It can cause overheating issues.
Yeah.
We are looking at actually the electronics guys. We've got a team of electronics engineers in Hong Kong who are investigating cordless motors for us, because there's 2 models we're working on at the moment that need cordless motors because they're a lot smaller than what we've released so far. So we are looking at it. It is in development. But to answer your question, we sort of stuck with what we knew for the first model. We needed to get something to market. We didn't want to take any risks, and that's the reason, really.
Oh, and they work well. There's no problem with the motors at all. And any of them, the 3 poles or the 5 poles, have all been beautiful runners. I was just interested in the design logic behind it. So and a wee hint that there's something small coming out as well. That my ears have gone a wee bit perked up.
With the A3 and A4, we used a 3-pole motor, but again, it's a motor that we knew we'd used before. With the Duchess, we've actually obviously switched to a 5-pole motor now, because we found that the motor in the A3 and A4 doesn't have carbon brushes, and sometimes the performance isn't quite what you want. And with the Duchess, we've moved over to a 5-pole skew wound motor now with carbon brushes, so it's a lot more reliable. You can control it a lot better with decoder firmware and things like that. So I think you will see a marked improvement over the performance of the Duchess.
Carl, that's really good to hear, and I think everyone out there is going to be really happy to hear that you have a kind of like a progressive mindset about the design and forward design of the products, because rather than here's what you've got, crack on with it. The fact that your design team is looking into this stuff and moving forward with it, even though obviously it never happens as fast as the customer wants it. I think people are going to be very happy with that. So, brilliant. Thanks for your answers. To move on to the next question to bring Martyn back in. Now, the Martyn, competition in the scale. Whether or not you want it, everybody out here is screaming for it, right? And we've seen recently the Cura scale bring out a little semi-joke idea. They did a limited edition of these little. They've got these little figures that were done by Modeloo that are of the Cura scale team with their measuring poles measuring up locos, and they brought them out in TT 120 scale.
Yeah, we saw that.
And we don't know how much of it is a joke, how much of it is them just sort of saying, let's just see how many people want to buy from us, and do they all get snapped up? I do know a lot of people did go, well, I've got no need for them, but I'm buying them because we want to persuade a Cura scale to come on board. And now, I don't, from the people that I've been speaking to, I don't think anybody wants Bachmann, Daypole, the Cura scale, Rapido to come on board and to the detriment of Hornby. What they would like to see is that we know that you can't do everything all in one go. So why not? I mean, you would never tell us, but we would love to know if you're actually even having conversations with people would say, you know what, we're going to leave the Great Western region alone. Crack on with it, Daypole. Or, you know, these are all, there's so much of people's imagination and it gets put down in social media. And then we all start believing it if someone's written a decent sentence. But anyway, we'd like to know what your thoughts are about the rest of the world taking on TT 120.
So we kind of probably know more than anyone else on what anyone else is up to. We haven't had those conversations. Whilst we have a relationship with all of the other manufacturers and do talk to them, we've never had an out and out. Are you doing it? You could do it. We're avoiding this. How do I feel about competition coming on board? Well, there are two sides to it. There's this positive thing in that it picks up the momentum of the scale a huge amount, which benefits everyone and proves that hopefully it's been the right thing to do. And then on the other side of it, then you've got what if you'd find that you've produced the exact same thing as another competitor and is the market big enough for two of the same thing? Then have those issues. So it's so much so that if it happened, I wouldn't be upset. If it didn't happen, I wouldn't be upset. It really is. You can flip that. I think the bit, I suppose, if I could make a wish, would be more for the kind of accessory side of things. So we can kind of maybe focus a bit more on things with wheels and others, the bits that go around that ground layouts, because there's only a certain amount of things you can produce, and if you want a high detailed layout, then there's a lot of potential accessories that go with that. If no one else did it, I wouldn't be really upset. If someone else came into play, then I'd see it as a compliment.
Yeah. I think that sounds like a really good sort of attitude towards it, because I think it would be a compliment. I kind of get the feeling that the bean counters of these firms are all watching, they're all waiting. They want to see what the numbers come up with.
I suppose that would be from a commercial perspective. That's what people would be looking at. The other side of it is if depending on manufacturer, if you're already involved in 2 or 3 scales, do you want a third or fourth? Especially if your scales are smaller. If you're a manufacturer and you do OG or in addition to 00, then having a smaller scale maybe isn't a bad thing. But if you're, say, already doing N, then are the two of them too close? And I don't think there's a definitive answer to that being right or wrong, and I'm kind of quite glad that's a decision that I don't have to make.
Yeah. At the moment, there certainly is a void when it comes to the accessory side, which is, I wouldn't say it's been filled, but there are lots and lots of small one-man bands appearing on eBay, producing some stuff to a better quality than others. From that, developing small businesses that have begun. One prime example, West Hill Wagon Works. After I'd ordered my Scotsman set over a year ago, and then we had that kind of hiatus where we're waiting for the stuff to turn up, really excited about it, got half the catalogue on pre-order, and we're sort of like, what we're doing. And so my son said, well, there's a railway show at Doncaster, so we popped down there. That was February of last year. Went down there, and there was obviously no TT120. There was a couple of old TT3. But over in the West Hill Wagon Works, there was this small little area of accessories in the 1 to 120 scale. Now, it's a huge, big lump of it, and it's always two people deep. People buying this stuff to detail their DMUs, and they've kind of seem to have come to kind of gentleman's agreement with Model U, who are also doing really high end 3D printing and scanning, and they've got some fantastic figure ranges. What we would really like to see, and I don't know whether you're already having this conversation, is they quite often do loco specific figures, and whether you guys would talk to them about getting drivers for your 125s, and whether you would and a crew for your Pacifics, because I really think they would really sell. How that benefits you is maybe on a rub off. People know that they can detail your locos better. It's not an immediate or obvious sale for you, is it? It's more promoting another company. But that seems that they already do stuff. I think they already do some stuff for some of your locos, but I guess they must have worked that out themselves, don't they? But that void does seem to be slowly filling up, and those smaller firms seem to be getting slightly bigger and doing well, and they're selling TT120 accessories. So one thing I'm a little bit confused by is I really like Pico. I really like their track. It's just a hangover from my dad always had Pico track. Okay, it's nothing against Hornby's track, right? But in fact, I've got two layouts. One's Hornby, one's Pico. But I thought they might, because they came out quite early. Although they weren't, maybe weren't doing it as early as you guys, because as Craig has already said, you were already doing design 3 years before the release. When they brought their stuff out in early mid 22, I thought that range might expand more quickly, but they seem to have stayed with what they've got, and I don't really understand it, and you can't answer that question, but I find it a bit confusing. I mean, maybe I'm biased because I'm a big fan of Hornby, and I'm a big fan of this range, so everything seems golden to me that's coming out of Margate at the moment. So yeah, maybe I need to be more reflective. But I still really can't quite understand. Having run a small business myself, if I saw that there was a market where people were spending money, I would want to investigate it. And so I could only assume that someone must be investigating. But we're all on tenterhooks to find out who that is and when it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, we don't know, and the other thing is with timing, so when and if a manufacturer does decide to go into things, obviously it depends on what the product is. If it's a resin building, then the development costs and turnaround times are quite significantly different to a piece of rolling stock. But if a manufacturer made a decision here today, it could well be 12, 18, maybe 24 months before the product actually sort of comes to market. And different manufacturers have different approaches to the kind of the timings of things. But even if a decision was made, 4 or 5 months ago, let's say, I think it's quite reasonable to see that it hasn't been announced yet. They haven't gone into it. Like with us as well, does a manufacturer come in and just do one thing and just sort of like toe in water, or actually do you have to show some sort of commitment? If you're going to do a loco, do you have to do the rolling stock to go with it, which is a huge financial investment. So it will be interesting to see if and how that were to happen. I think the more than likely thing is there's probably people just watching and seeing at the moment, and seeing what kind of happens and comes through. When the 50 comes through, and we talked about the Duchess earlier as well, where there's marked improvements on it. I think that for the model railway community will be a bit of a kind of a needle mover. And then it's all down to what kind of comes next, I mean, people know what's coming. They just don't know the order of it, really. And there will be a few surprises along the way, as we did with the with the last launch, but by bringing in the shunter.
Yeah,
We've done there in terms of bringing in much shorter lead times between announcement and actual product in hands. I think that is helpful actually. It avoids any sense of it sort of being vaporware that is, may or may not come. We're really just using this as a gauge to see what response it is and then decide whether to actually go ahead and develop it. This is actually a commitment to something, and you can expect to get it in reasonable time frame after that. So I think that move is also sensible and is good to see. Like Chris, I have been surprised a bit that Pico, in terms of their track, is obviously selling well. In terms of their little wagons, they seem to have sold them extremely well as well. I was surprised they haven't at least given us a taste of what might be coming next. I'm sure there is something coming next. We'll probably have to wait and see. I know that their signals are not far away probably from getting launched. And I think yourselves, you have announced, I talk about other manufacturers' competition taking in accessories. Having a little bit of accessories in your own range, though, is, again, I think a sign of your own commitment to it in terms of having the signals coming up, having the level crossings as well, and a little bit of lateral thinking there and having a modular crossing that can accommodate multiple tracks. I'm quite intrigued to see how that all works when it comes out.
Talking of tracks, now, can we flip back to Carl? When it comes to the track system, obviously one of the big benefits about TT120 is the fact that although some people want to build big layouts, you can actually build something quite tidy in a small space. But some track components I think would really complement that, such as curved points and double slips. Are these in the pipeline?
They are in the plan. Yes. Yeah, we have. We got like a 7-year plan at the moment. We're working to. Obviously, we are, as you can see by our releases now. You can see we're adding more and more things into, like the J50 wasn't in there originally, and we're adding more and more locos and things we didn't originally think of, but as the market's telling us, we've had to sort of react to it. But in that plan are things like curve points, wire points, we've got coming out soon, hopefully coming out soon, and things like that. So our plan is to do the full range of track pieces you'd expect. Any scale to have, really.
Flexi in that, Carl, because I know I've been mentioned earlier on the idea of flexi track. Is that something I know that Pico have theirs, but are Hornby going to move into that area, or is that too specific to answer just now?
We have to. Well, truth is, we have designed it. We're just working with vendors now to get a cost in and things like that. So eventually it will come.
Good. Cool. Excellent. Right. What do we have next, Greg? What's on the question list?
Yeah, that's the future plans. We track components one area. We've kind of covered that just now, but we're also looking at some of the possibilities of the sets you have. And Chris hinted at this earlier, would a simpler basic set be something that is useful? Would you see that helping to develop the scale?
Like an 08 with a few wagons on a very small radius 1 or radius 2 set. So it's smaller in price value. It's also simpler. There's no bogies to muck about with. It's a much simpler thing for a younger person or a newbie to get on and actually enjoy, and then obviously develop forward.
Yeah, I mean, to answer that, what we know and what we've done in the 00 world, which is really how that works, isn't it? What we term as an entry level price set, which we don't have in TT, and the sensible thing would be for that to appear at some stage. The complexity there with that is that to do that, you need sort of some different tooling, some more, let's say, much more basic tooling to kind of hit those sort of levels of more simplicity of use, but also more importantly to hit that price point. And to have launched TT with that wouldn't have been the right thing, I think, to do. So I completely understand the order in which it's happened, but as a result of that, it means, you know, if you want to enter into the world of TT, it's going to cost the best part of 200 quid to get sort of started with a set. And, you know, and other things can be achieved in that space. So I think that now we have more of our kind of, let's say, our detailed models through, which has probably marked the standard of TT. It wouldn't be a mad thing to start thinking about what would a more basic thing for a starter piece actually look like, just for people to kind of give it a go and decide whether it's for them.
Not that I'm asking or suggesting for one moment that I think you should do a railroad version of TT120. I don't think the scale warrants it. I think it's I think, for me, it's one of its selling points is the fact that it is a super detailed and very well engineered product. But I wonder whether or not, even just from your own range, maybe the blue 08, and I was wondering why that's been dropped off the catalogue. I'm thinking maybe is that going to appear in a set with some of the 7-plank wagons or whatever, and having that just in a small oval. So that's using products you've already got. So there's no new tooling. Okay, that's not going to make it particularly much cheaper than what's out there, but it might make the price bracket 20, 30, 40 quid cheaper, and you've got something else that, go back to those collectors, that might be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there, as you say, with sort of some of the smaller wagons, there is that. Weirdly, the 08, and it's the same in 00 scale as well, considering its size, is not something cheap to produce. So it's not. What you don't we think? Well, it's much. No. It's a simple 6-wheeled diesel. It doesn't actually. It's not cheap to produce. No. And that's why, if you actually look at in the world of 00, if there are any sets that have a little shunter in them, it's normally a different 040, because there's. Sure. I've never actually really got to the bottom of it, of why it is what it is, but yeah, the 08 has never been very attractive to be filling that gap.
It's the decoration that puts the price up at the 08. It's got very complex decoration. There's a lot of masking operations and things like that have to happen. So. And also, you've obviously got a quarter wheels and things like that. It's not a straightforward locomotive to produce. That's the reason.
It's a narrow loco as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Otherwise, you'd have put an 8-pin in there. What we all want.
And that's the simplicity of us looking on from the outside. You know, I know it looks a big boxy square loco. How hard can it be almost? And then you start thinking about, okay, but there's all the particulars. There's the decoration. There's the quartering. There's the narrowness of the body, and suddenly it doesn't work as well as you might imagine.
Yeah, when you get to things like wheel quarter, diesels and electrics, they're pretty straightforward to produce for you. You just got to get the decoration right. The actual running of them is quite easy to achieve. But when you move on to steam, where you've got to worry about valve gear and wheel quartering and things like that's when it becomes difficult.
The 6-pin. Everyone wants to know why we can't have it as a sound decoder. Now, I'm assuming that's because of component size and because of other issues along those, or availability of components. But everyone's tasted sound and the fantastic HM7000 system. We want it everywhere. So is this something that will always, that's never going to be addressed, or is it something that you will be certainly will always have an ear out for, whether or not you can actually produce a 6-pin decoder HM7000 compatible with sound?
Do you want me to answer that, Martyn? Or
yes, please.
So the situation with the 6-pin is we still haven't got the non-sound version to market, and the reason for that is we are still working with the chip manufacturer to sort of develop the mesh networking and the firmware related to that chip. It's going to have a different chip to the other decoders we've released already. Going forwards after that, we will look to develop a sound version of it. we think we've identified a chip that can do the sound and the Bluetooth all in one chip. But the actual design of that board isn't ready yet.
Okay.
We need to get this. We need to get the non-sound version out into the market first and get that.
Sure. Yeah, we're all desperately waiting for it.
Yeah. We are hoping that the timing of the 6-pin, the non-sound, if it doesn't come out roughly the same time or close to coming out at the same time as J50, could that potentially hamper sales of the new Steam 060?
That's what we want, really. We need it. We need it out by then. You know, already we've got the 08 out there, which needs it. You know, we're trying to work. You know, we are working on it as fast as we possibly can, but our hands are tied slightly because we rely on other companies to do work for us, and you know, you can imagine for a chip manufacturer, we're quite small fry, really. You know, we're unfortunately we do get sort of put to the bottom of the pile sometimes, you know, when they're dealing with mobile phone companies and things like this. So we are working on it as fast as we can, and we are getting there, but we obviously can't release it until everything's as we want it, basically. So yeah,
that's that. I think most people will understand it. It's just good for them to hear it.
Yeah.
Right. Whilst you're here, though. Right.
Here's one I prepared earlier.
Okay, so this is your 50-foot, not 50-inch. This is your 50-foot. The passenger brake, or some people calling it the parcel brake. Now, we were talking about developing of issues. We remember when the Mark Ones first came out, they were scraping a little bit, and then I think it was Gary Hall and a number of other people had noticed it and looked at ways of reducing it, and I think they got in contact with then Simon Kohler, and then I presume the tooling changed because I've got Mark Ones that have got different bogies that are ever so slightly different, so we've got better clearance, and of course they all go around radius 1. Now this is a perfect little passenger brake to go with maybe a 1 Mark 1, a couple of vent wagons being pulled by a J50 or maybe something slightly bigger, in a mixed freight kind of thing, mixed train. But this has really bad scraping wheels. And
is that the 57 foot, the shorty?
Yeah, and it's on the information. I think it says that it's only fit for radius 3. Now, unfairly, some people on social media are saying that that's a cop out, and that what you should have done is actually got those bogies sorted, and that calling it a radius 3 only like a rolling stock, such a small thing, is a little bit poor. But what we want to know is, and Martyn, if you want this bit cut out, we'll cut it out. Okay, but we want to know whether or not this is something you are going to be, that there's a plan in motion that getting these rectified, because people are fixing them themselves. They're scraping a little bit of plastic away, and then all of a sudden you've got a sweet running, very well designed, gorgeous looking piece of rolling stock that will go around radius 1. So Craig, is this something that's is in hand, or are you aware of it?
I'd be interested to know what the fixes are, because we've tried quite a few things now to make it happen.
It's been simply a case of removing some of the material.
Yeah, where? On the side,
Tool bar at the back, I think, but there's a few on your own forum, on the Hornby forum TT. There is a few very close up pictures of what someone has done in order to achieve perfect running. Yeah.
So what we found, I'll be completely honest, Martyn, you can cut this out if you think I'm being too honest, but so with that particular coach, you've got these side frames on the chassis, okay. And because TT scale is true scale, meaning that the sort of body of the model matches the scale of the track, it means the wheels are that much closer to the edge.
Yeah,
to the side frames. And when we first got samples of this model from the manufacturer, it actually worked absolutely fine. You know, ran second radius, you know, no problem. But at some point between then and getting onto our decoration samples, something happened with their mouldings, and you know, whether it was a setup problem with the machine, you know, obviously you can adjust loads of different settings on the moulding machine. It can affect the dimensions of a moulding, and it showed us that we were right on the limit of clearance. So what we decided to do, you'll notice that the wheels are slightly thinner than what we've got on some of our other models. So we sort of maximise the clearance that way.
I hadn't noticed that. No.
Yeah, and we also tried to sort of control the sort of dimension of between the two cones that are in the moulding of the bogie and the axle, so there was no clearance. But what we're finding over time, those bogie sides are coming out slightly, and it allows the wheel sets to go up. They're not, basically the wheel set is not sitting where it should be.
Right.
So it's sitting up too high in the bogie and it's touching the bodywork.
Similar to the 12 tank, same thing. The wheel set.
Yeah. This is a really difficult thing to control, and I think forwards we're probably going to look at having a separate metal frame in the bogie,
right,
which we can control a lot better. If you know, you'll see this on. I mean, a lot of Roco models have it where there's like a pressed metal frame that actually holds the axles in place, and then the sort of plastic bogies wrapped around it. Or the other option is to have bearing cups in the bogie. But yeah, we're right, basically with that model, we're right on the limit of clearance. And yes, you can, you know, if you know, a one-man band can sit there and perfect it and add all these clearances in to get it working properly. But when you're dealing with, you know, production, there's variances all over the production batch, and you know, some models are probably fine, others are, you know, the other way, and there's always a tolerance, and we just haven't got, you know, enough. The only tolerance we could add into it was third radius is the minimum curve we recommend.
Sure.
Because then you shouldn't have a problem. But
they can go round a radius too. You just if you're doing DC without sound, you can hear them.
Yeah,
you know?
It's pushing it. That's the problem. Yeah, it's pushing it, especially with that short coach.
Can we check? And Martyn and Carl, this obviously, as Chris said earlier, this area is off scripted, if you like, to some extent. It's not when we give you heads up for. Are you happy for these answers still to be included? Do you want us to edit that down anyway? Or
I think I think it's we're trying to be honest here, and so I'm kind of happy to let go. And I think the point is that we know there's an issue there, hence why it's been advertised or marketed as R3, but we also know that over the kind of the longer term, that's not the ideal way to do it. So it's kind of almost saying, do you know what, the product's out there in the market.
Yeah,
there's little we can really do about it other than just say R3. But we understand this, we recognize it. Therefore, you know, Carl's team are looking at ways for future productions, or even with other models that might incur the same problem, to actually have another way of doing it. And it will add a level of complexity. It will add a level of cost to it as well. But these are things we need to do. There is sort of huge elements of learnings here. So I'm happy for that to kind of be left in, because as I say, the outline messages is something we are looking to rectify.
That's
as a bit of a coverall for about 150 questions we've had from people. Pretty much all of them specifically asking about which loco, when it's going to be finished, when it's going to be out there, when's the 37 going to be done, all of these things that we know you can't answer to the accuracy they want, right? But can you give an explanation of I suppose, to help them out? It's more of a case of, and it's obvious to you because you live this, you live manufacturing the trains and the rolling stock, the low coast and the rolling stock. But some of these people, maybe a lot of the ones who are new to the hobby, maybe you can give them a bit of an insight into how this works and why these design and construction decisions are made. It's a lot of it's to do with the economy of trying to get it to be the right price, and the fact that you need to deal with manufacturers from different countries. So I wonder if Martyn or Craig, Carl, whether you could actually give them a little bit of an answer to why this is the case, why we do think, why Hornby and the other manufacturers say this is what we're going to make, and it's going to be happening sometime in the future, and that's about as good as you're going to get. So yeah, over to you.
So I mean, Hornby has in recent years announced things, in my opinion, perhaps a little bit kind of too early. And TT was different because we had to show like a longer term commitment. One of the things we're trying to do now is, before we actually announce something, is to actually show that where we are in the development process, i.e. this isn't just a, hey, we're doing a so-and-so, let so many people order it and then we'll decide whether we're going to make it or not, or design it or tool it. So we allow, I mean, probably around 18 months from the start of research and design to the product hitting the marketplace. And some models come through a lot easier and quicker than others. You know, for example, the most complex is always likely to be a steam locomotive. You know, as Carl touched on earlier, there's much more kind of like almost working parts versus a diesel, and then a coach or a wagon is always much less can go wrong, let's say, than what a diesel or a steam engine would be. But that is around about the time frame, whether it's getting the design accurate, and then once you've got it looking right, there's the whole getting it running right, and there's a lot of back and forth. And once you've got that from a prototype perspective right, you then got the kind of the mass production side of things, and the higher the detail the item is, the more levels of complexity and more things that can go wrong. And that's why there is a bit more of a kind of I suppose a fluid approach to when something will come out. And then also from a development perspective, sometimes you can get absolutely things right, and then it goes to manufacturing, and they do something which to you and I would be like, well, that's clearly wrong. Someone say decorational, but to someone sitting in or working in a factory, these things don't mean anything to them like they do you or I, and so that they can make what will be a quite simple error and not know anything about it and produce a whole line of them, and then you go through a rejection process, and then you have to restart the project. So not only does that maybe take 6 weeks longer than you planned, but the next thing that was going to be made on that factory line, that's now been shoved out as well. So you have all these things coming into it. You know, recent times with what's going on in the Middle East, you know, boats are taking a couple of weeks longer. So that's why to commit an exact date is so difficult. And really, it used to be the minute it kind of hits and gets on a ship, you could say it will be with you in 6 weeks. But now with ships, and especially post-COVID, a lot of the time they're not even coming direct to the UK. They make a random stop in Belgium or something like that on the way. Again, these things, it adds more and more time into it. But we're trying to get in a position where if we're announcing or showing something, we're really confident that product will be in the market in a year's time. And we're also trying to show more steps along the way of what's going on. So hopefully, not just from a content perspective, but also to show people the progression. You know, those people that have been in the hobby for a while may pre-order and may be willing to wait a year for an item, but those who are newer to it, by showing them those kind of design steps along the way, will hopefully kind of over time give them a better understanding that all that goes into making these models.
Yeah, brilliant. I think that's
actually I think I covered exactly what Chris was asking there. And a lot of folk who are more used to the hobby, they know these sort of things, but folk who are just coming in, that's the kind of explanation I think, I'll be cutting myself out of this, but that's for sure. But that's the kind of explanation I think it's extremely helpful to have put out there in plain language. Just in relation to that, I was you mentioned you got your April launch. You hinted at that point that you may be doing other announcements throughout the year. Would that be, are you ready to give an indication of when you might have penciled in another announcement for? Don't want to tell anyone, don't worry, you can just tell us. us and the few hundred who might watch this, or a few
And
thousand.
can we book in the Zoom meeting, please?
The honest answer is we haven't got an exact date in mind yet. We're trying to quite possibly avoid January, because that's when we do our big 00 announcement, and we are trying to kind of keep those two things a little bit separate where we can. But a lot of it will determine on where we're at with certain projects. You know, we're not going to come forward with an announcement and show things if there isn't really much to show, or we're not confident that we're going to see it in a certain time frame. I mean, it'd be really, really great to have something else this year, but we wouldn't promise that at this stage. I would rather not have something, but then when we do have something, deliver on it, then just sort of throw something in almost for the sake of you haven't heard from us for a while.
I feel like since the spring hit, even before your April announcements, there's been a really good steady stream of new models between the coaches, the HSTs, stuff that's coming out. The Dutch is not far away. The 50s aren't far away. You've got the 21 ton as well, I think, not far away, and the hoppers as well. So that gives a real sense of momentum to what's going on. And in relation to 21 ton wagon liveries, we know there's only one of them in the new catalogue that's out. Are the other liveries simply pushed back because you don't expect to release them this year? Is that why they're not in this catalogue, or has there been some issue with that? Or
is that the 21 tanker you're talking about?
No, is it the 21 ton? Why is 21 ton wagon?
The mineral wagon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that's right. So that is, I believe, tooling wise, it's almost there, isn't it, Carl?
Yeah. We've had decoration samples, so
yeah, that might not be too far away.
Very good. Well, I think maybe when I did my catalogue review, we noticed that a number of things kind of dropped off the catalogue. Now, I would imagine there's probably different reasons for different things. Okay, so the blue 08 has been replaced by the green 08. I don't suppose that means that we never see the blue 08 again, but it's just dropped off this year's catalogue. Fair enough. But things like the GBRF Class 50, which is the one that's in preservation, you can still buy it on your website, but it's come off of the catalogue. Is that because when you do deals with these with like the preservation people who own that, it's a limited period or a limited slot? And also some of those wagons have gone, so there's only one of those in the catalogue rather than three. And then also we had the 2E, the Mark 2Es, the Mark 2Fs. They seem to have been kind of like harvested a bit as well, or culled a bit. So I wonder if you've got any reasons for that.
So yeah, I mean, what happens is, and it's all to do with systems, so it's all a bit dull and boring. But when certain products fall out of certain time frames, it might mean that we take them off an order form or out of a catalogue because we know it's not going to come in a certain period of time. However, the website, because of what that reads off, doesn't always necessarily tell the exact same story. So it's kind of not very ideal to really know exactly when things are coming. And there are some things which we postponed, whilst we may not have kind of outwardly communicated it hugely. We thought, well, actually, we will still do that, but we're actually going to be 6 months later. So let's not kind of talk about it a huge amount now. And then with that, there's certain rolling stock that goes with it. So we try and hold that back as well. So those things will come. And it will get a lot tighter with kind of the announcement and visibility of things and an exact date of when it's coming, because I think there's probably around about 10% of things which fall into this kind of area of confusion, and we do need to tidy that up.
Yeah. That's it. Most of us, a lot of the kind of like Chinese whisperers that we have would just disappear. And so as long as you guys, as you've already proven in this interview, want to be upfront and want to be honest and explain to us what's going on, even though sometimes I can imagine it being frustrating when you've got a job to do and you've got plenty on your plate, that the first thing on your mind isn't actually a bunch of people on Facebook saying why they've done this, why have they done that, and you going around and answering all those questions because you never get your job done. But we appreciate if we can focus these sort of things in Let's Talk Let's Talk TT, then maybe that helps alleviate some of that.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's one of the many reasons what makes them worth doing. I think by the back end of this year, we would kind of those items that have been announced and maybe still appear here but don't appear there, that should all start to tidy up quite a heck of a lot, and people have a visibility of the exact date on when things are exactly coming. We haven't really kind of pulled away from anything and decided we're not doing that now. As I say, it's just a timing thing in when it actually kind of comes through. And I don't think there's any, off the top of my head, any kind of product where we've come across that we now longer cannot do because of an external reason to do with a preservation or a license of some form. I don't think that's the case on anything. What we want to do going forward is sort of start to show a 3D print of a product at an earlier stage, but not necessarily commit the liveries at an early stage. And then as it comes through, because what ends up happening is that if like we did right at the beginning, we kind of maybe suggested what the 37 liveries do. Well, actually, when you fast forward in this instance, the best part of 2 years on from that might have changed. They may no longer be the exact best liveries to start with because of where you're up to with coach releases or something else like that. So what we want to probably do is that, yes, the 37's coming, and people have seen something three-dimensional to represent that. The next stage of it will actually be to see exactly what those kind of liveries are and the exact dates of when they'll be, and that's something which will kind of come out this year, and that's something we'll start to replicate because you've got to have the right rolling stock and things to go with it. It's different in 00 because there are so many other manufacturers and other things out there that you can, and even the second-hand market as well. Whereas if someone has got a certain logo, they will find something to go behind it, even if they have to buy it from different manufacturers. TT is different to that. It's more sensitive than ever. We really want to get kind of tight on the idea that actually, if you've bought that logo out, it's got something to go with it. And then if you think of that, going back to what I was saying earlier about how a logo is much more complicated and much more can essentially go wrong in the development process than what you say a wagon is. At that stage, sometimes you have to slam the anchors on with rolling stock because that's not quite ready yet, and that's where you get these kind of slight confusions in release dates.
Yeah, cool. Greg, do we have anything else?
Yeah, a few quick fire questions I think to try and put in. We want this to, when it goes out and is edited, to be just under an hour, not longer. I think that's people's minds that they're going to sit and watch it. So we'll try and bring it back. We just hit over the hour just now since we started this, but there's quite a bit of editing to do, I think. Few quick fires. For the anguished souls who are waiting for some Southern Railways stock, should they abandon all hope, or is that on the horizon?
On the horizon.
Very good.
And the Great Western Mob?
On the horizon as well. As to exactly when, that's the difficult one. But you can't go in with one thing, can you? There's got to be sort of several things. So when we commit, we commit.
In the this time round, you've had the track pods announced, which is interesting to see that. Are they available? Are they sort of giving you an idea of what can be done, or are they available as a one purchase? You purchase this and all that comes with it, like a track pack.
Is that in relation to our website?
No, it's in the catalog this time around. You have a section on track that has the
sorry, the track plans. Yes.
Track pods.
They've been very well received.
These extension pods.
Right, I'm with you now. Sorry, miles away. So yeah, that is really about inspiration. For years on 00, we've done these track plans books, and it just gives people ideas. You in the magazine world, you see a lot done on other scales and not yet so much on TT. So this was, just sort of showing what can be done, and they will evolve, and there will be more. We probably won't make a kind of a one-off, buy this product and you get all these bits, because I think there has to be flexibility. A lot of this is about inspiration.
Yeah. I've got one last question for Carl. Carl, will we be seeing something in the middle, i.e., like a prairie or what, a 262, a 462, something that would have been seen in the 50s and 60s, pulling anything and everything, because at the moment you've got your big, beautiful, fast passenger trains, and then you've brought in the J50, excellent. Will there be any of those workhorses that were in the middle?
Yeah, just watch this space, really.
Yeah.
See things like that planned.
Yeah.
So it's just obviously we can't do everything at once, And,
he's fishing. Just ignore him. He's sort of just dropping a line.
I think that the thing with this is there's a heck of a lot to be done and can be done, and it's not that we're not going to do this stuff, because there's so many sensible reasons to do it. It's just about the order of and the when, and we've kind of definitely kind of keeping a close eye on what people are talking about and how things are performing, and that can and will change the shape and order and the order of which we release things. And if you go from the very first catalogue that was published, and the danger is that if we start bringing in a lot more things that haven't been announced, people are going to be like, "Oh, you're never going to do the Britannia, or you're never going to," and that's not the case. It's just an order.
Yeah.
You can't sadly do it all at once.
No, I know.
Both of you, have you got a favourite model of what's been released so far or is about to be released? I know Carl showed us something off camera earlier, but what's your own favourite of what's come out so far?
There you go, first goal.
Yeah, so my one's it's the HST. This was the model I sort of loved when I was a kid. I just it's always had a special place in my heart. So it's been the HST. But I have to say, after seeing this new 66 sample we've had in, it could change.
Yeah.
Are you able to bring that? Would you bring that on for us just now, or we can cut that out if you'd rather not?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is in focus, but it really does look the business. So we will have this coming to Key Model World. Anyone, we'll have this on display with the other liveries, and obviously we have the J50 as well on display.
Excellent.
The smile on Peachy's face now. What about yourself, Martyn? What's your own favourite of what's come out?
So the what's come out, and it's not strictly quite come out yet, for me is going to be the 50. 50 was sound, particularly. I think that's I love listening to it as much as I love looking at it, but I'm pretty sure for me that's going to be quite quickly replaced by the 37, because that's more a personal favourite.
Brilliant. Well, gentlemen, we really appreciate your time. It's been, for as far as we're concerned, I think this has been we couldn't have asked for more from you, and we really hope that our viewers are going to appreciate you joining us today.
I thank you very much, and then thanks for your times, and looking forward for it to kind of going out there for all the people that want to tune in and watch it. This stuff from us is kind of quite day to day, and to be able to kind of hear people's questions and hopefully answer them and also learn from it is a hugely positive thing for us. So we really appreciate it. Thanks.
Excellent.
Lovely.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Talk to us, and I hope I like to be honest where I can, and I know it's not all been smooth sailing, but I do think we're getting there now.
More than I mean, the things that were glitches, they were on the scale of things, no pun intended. They were small. They weren't enough to put people or shouldn't have put people off. So things we raised, even that's not on the level of criticism. It's just comment.
Yeah.
This is reality. This is life. Not everything works perfectly first time. This is human nature. And if people haven't figured that out yet, especially when you're down to a 120th of real size, then they've been living under a rock somewhere. So no, we appreciate the time and effort you guys put into it. It's our hobby. It's our fun. It's not our life, but it's great. And
good.
Right.
Thank you.
Well, hopefully you gang out there, I think this is fantastic. We were absolutely, Greg and I are absolutely stunned by actually some of the honesty and the detail the guys have gone into. So don't forget, you can to like and subscribe, not just my channel, PGTT120, but also Mac Trains. So talking to Mac Trains, over to Mac to hit for him to say goodbye.
Goodbye, folks. I hope you found that useful. I was very impressed, as Chris said, with I think integrity comes across. They're not brushing things under carpet. They're aware of them. They're looking to make them better. They're improving existing models. I see that with the 12-ton tankers. They said that's going to be a new running. They've got that right. That's what you want to hear. Hopefully there's more to come. Keep watching.
See you, bye.
You'll find him surrounded by all his luggage in a first-class compartment. Don't you be afraid. Just slip the window down and say, Peachy's gone south for the week.
Peachy's gone south for the week?
Yes, and he'll tumble. Well, I'll be getting off now before we reach the station.